My name is Zanele Muholi. I'm currently in São Paulo at IMS, where I'll be having a solo show in 2025. I'm here to share my visual archive, how it all started or where it began. I am born in South Africa in KwaZulu-Natal. The images were part of my upbringing, except that it wasn't from home, but then it was mostly mainstream. And it wasn't what I studied at school, maybe at high school. It just came later on in life when I finished high school. I did different jobs, and later on I happened to work for an online magazine which was called Behind the Mask. Behind the Mask reported on Black LGBTQIA+ individuals in Africa. So we reported mainly on the community affairs in Africa. So I was interested in capturing the voices of the people who were speaking from different communities. I reported on township lives, like queer lives. At this time, it was not common to hear voices of trans lives because people only understood what they understood at that time. Yeah. So I'll say it's been more than 20 years of working hectically as a visual activist, because then the work, evolved around activism. It wasn't, I didn't even know if it fitted around art or it fitted in the mainstream as how things were back then in terms of like the politics as South Africa was going through like different transformation. So I would say that the past 20 years of my life, or past or more than 20 years of my life, have been like mainly focusing on Black LGBTQIA+ individuals. Because we didn't have an archive that spoke to me as a person who was working, or like at my coming out stage, I didn't have tangible visual historical document that I could use as a reference point to say that we exist. There were many people who were part of the queer movement who have a different understanding on what they were speaking on or off. But then not everybody understood really what was going on in certain places. Because you're speaking of South Africa with, like currently we are more than 50 million, citizens. And then people are coming out on a daily basis. So I can't say we have an accurate statistics that looks specifically at the queer lives in the country. But I know of, of cases of hate crime that one has recorded with the collective that I was part of. And when we speak on that, you say, how far can we go to make sure that we record this incident in various places? So I could say my realization come at that transformative period. And I can't say like precise, because it comes from a space of desperation where I saw the need of documenting our lives from grassroots level, where I didn't even know that the images were going to be at the gallery or at the museum. I just spoke from that space in which I just wanted to make sure that people who were part of protest, were part of pride, were part of different events or activities that were queer related were all counted. Because the mainstream has a tendency of forgetting, or the choice of directors or producers to forget some individuals. So I just wanted everyone to be included, everyone that I saw at that time to be included. And with my understanding where it was going to end up, I'd be lying to you if I could say that I knew that one day I'll be at this museum or I'll be showing at like museum. around the world. I was just too desperate. I was so thirsty for this information. The lack was too much for me, because then with people who move around different departments, from academics to arts to activism, I don't think that there was that connection in that way that we could balance the equation in terms of sharing these voices. Those who started queer lives or started queer existence, their take was different to those who were living the life, In most cases, it's where outsiders who really went like living maybe in the townships. If it was academics, there were a lot of interest from overseas or international scholars who came to South Africa post 1994, just after the transition period in terms of including the queer community as part of the agenda. So I could say that a lot happened. And then towards the end of 90s, South Africa hosted the first international human rights conference happened in South Africa, which was under ILGA, International Lesbian and Gay Association, was held in South Africa. At this time, that's when I really, really, really felt that one needed to own, a camera and document, because there was so much that was written about us. There was still that lack of visibility when you speak of like queerness, transness. And at the same time, there was a lot of homophobia and queerphobia and lesbophobia that happened back then. Yeah, it seems like yesterday, but it's been a while. So in short, I can't say I grew up holding a camera and shooting around, and it was never my hobby. It would have been an expensive hobby for a person who grew up in a poor, background. When I was young, there were some photographs that were taken by a relative who was a photographer in the area, who would photograph weddings and parties around the area. Those maybe photographs, they form part of our families without us knowing who were the photographers. In my instance, it was kind of like easier-ish because we knew that there was Mr. So-and-so who was taking those photographs. But then now, it's not even about like this existence of these family albums or family pictures. Then this album becomes part of like family identity in a way. But as you look at these family albums or these family photographs, if at all, that one or two or three, you question your existence. Like, what kind of a person are you in this image? Are you just like that black sheep of that family of like existing, but then without an extra identity or unique identity? Who am I in this family album? Also, it doesn't come from a cozy corner, because remember, I'm not from a rich family where you could trace or track and trace your great whoever that is in the picture. But as we look at these family albums, we don't have a reference in which we could say my uncle was like me, and then I'm so proud to say that I'm not the first one in my family, which then becomes different when a young person or any of my nephews, my nieces, my grandchildren who were born by my nephews or nieces, they could have a reference point now to say that we know that there was a Zanele Muholi in this family who used to take photographs of people like this and that, and we feel that that community got to be respected through that visual archive that existed because our family member was. So, which is why I say my beginning, my coming out as a visual activist, which is the term that I coined fully, because I'll say there are many visual artists that exist in the world. We know it's people who produce art and their focus is on visuality. But then now, to say that how many of us that look specifically on on sexuality, on gender, on visual and activism, to pair all of these, and also to look further in terms of these intersections of all these identities that I have mentioned. We say we exist, we say we are here. We know that there's a need of having these images, but do we want people to look at post images? It's beautiful, it's joyful, it takes away the pain of what we're going through as queer or trans people. But the truth is, there's nothing for many of us that is joyful, because a lot of community members have suffered, so much violence, evictions, displacement, and also some people couldn't even finish, school because they were either, mocked or violated by those who are in power in those schools. So there's so much that we're trying to repair in terms of queer existences. So which is why I feel that this resistance is much needed, and it is through this work that one could say that no one should go through this in the near future, because we are paving way for those who are born as we speak, and those who might not have had the opportunity to express themselves in ways that one has tried to do in a way. Yeah, I would say that the family albums exist, but then they're not queer enough for us to have that particular reference point in which we speak within those families. We see traces of us in family albums, but then again, it's not enough, because there's so much secrecy, when it comes to sexual orientation or sexuality, or when it comes to expression. We see there's loads of images that we read from different archives, I would say if we look at like industrial photography, we look at social photographies, we look at educational photographies, it's very rare that you could have enough visual content that speaks to what you are looking for, which then compels us to further produce this content for people not to go through that lag anymore. We don't need to dig so much deeper. It should be in the surface, just like how social photography is presented in any other space. The first images that I remember as a child, actually looking at the mainstream besides the family album, and also the visuals that have remained with me. I grew up in a period where there was a lot of tribal tensions, which claimed so many people's lives, at that time. The South African transformation period, towards the end of like apartheid, or before we voted for the first time as South Africans, was not an easy one. So there was a lot of like brutality and killings in my region of people who either belonged to a certain political party and those who were perceived to be informers. So the images of people being necklaced, a lot of bombings that took place in my neighborhood because somebody was suspected to be of the opposition party, were the common images that I remember as a child. Other than that, we grew up with a beauty contest that took place in my neighborhood, and you'd see like a lot of girls who wanted to become the most beautiful girl in the region will enter Miss Durban, who then became the representative for Miss South Africa in whatever space. Beauty pageants also were common images, away from violence, then there was beauty. Away from beauty, then we have the Durban, because I come from a region that is coastal, of like families going to the beach, but then again, that period, I come up from a space where the beaches were divided because the north were for white people and then the south were for black people. So being in the space, like remembering that divide and how at the end of the 80s, the beaches were open for all, became like something else, you know. Because these are the memories that we have as children of things that hurt us and things that we are forced to remember. Yeah. Yeah, those are the images that remain to me of like these violent attacks on politics and so on. And then the images of beauty pageants. And not far from my school, there was also another man who photographed young people who were from different schools, and they had a studio. The studio will have people wearing traditional clothes, you know, like they be adorned in colorful beads, and then they'll sit on a grass mat, different poses and so on. It was beautiful, you know, studio images. I could say what the Malians or images like of Seydou, for instance, you know, of Malik Sedibe, we had a different setup than the West, you know, studio images that we had access to when one started traveling and going through different exhibitions around the globe, where you say, wow, the studio photography has existed before, but then it differs from region to region because of the dress and how the dress or the regalia speaks to a certain tribe or speaks to a certain period in time, where you say that this was how studio photography worked back then, which then, when we look at fashion photography, it's just completely changes also the tune and the setup in which we read images. The change happened at this time, like early 2000. What I used to do, I would, like coming out from this desperation now, like trying to define this work. I had a friend who came to South Africa to do research, and who then suggested that I should take this to the next level, because when I came out with my photography, a lot of scholars were interested in the work that I was doing. And because not many black females at that time could have access to this work, in a way that some people thought that the work was produced by a white man. And there's a documentary called Enraged by a Picture that I produced as part of the film festival. So Enraged by a Picture is a 15 minutes, it's a short documentary in which I was speaking and trying to articulate this work. So I have submitted a poster presentation at a Gender and Visuality Conference, which was held at University of Western Cape. And the images were just like part of that conference. And listening to the people's responses to the work was like, oh, people need to see more of this work. And it was overwhelming as well. And it was such a shock, because you coming out at this period of, like, there's so much violence in place, and people have been attacked. Some of the black lesbians in different townships are being raped. You come out with this document of women loving women, and you present it to the fore. But then I'm saying at this time, I'm speaking on what exists, because according to South African Constitution, we have a right to live, to express our gender. So where are the images that speaks to the Constitution? The people who were theorizing the Constitution, there were people who were theorizing gender and sexuality or sexual orientation in South Africa. The eyes were on South Africa at this time to see how strong this Constitution was all about, you know. Then there were those people who were like, but this is not how it's supposed to be. So there were some challenges of this Constitution. But all I did was just to present the picture, to say that you cannot say people they have a right to exist when there's no visual that speaks to that. So we need evidence of this living. There were other images that were captured by people at Pride. Pride has been there. But then the gay boys, they called the shot, you know. I could think that they were more visible than the other genders within the queer agenda. Yeah. So then it was conferences after conferences, and people started noticing, and people started writing. There's some I'm like confused, and what these people are on about. All I want to do is to make sure that we are visible. We exist. Those were my wits. It was based on politics of representation, of self within, politics of existence in a political space that has this constitution, speaking on the need of resistance at all of these places where we at. And now with this work, I want to make sure that it gets to be published, because then publications will live beyond us, Yeah, because if we don't leave any traces of us in any ways, it would mean that that never existed, So it was just like that lack, and also my mission or my intention. I was so intentional. I just wanted to make sure that we were as visible as much as possible. Those who were in the forefront, maybe those who decided on the 2 or 3, 4 people who were brave enough to be in the mainstream media. Then TV shows, there were very few people who could be on TV because they were brave enough. Some people were behind. So then I just thought, whatever comes, because everybody who agrees to be on this will be taking risk. I was taking risk, but we cannot be shortchanged really. So I could say maybe that invisibility was kind of contested with some of the work that I produced. Yeah, in a way that right now when I look back, because I'm looking at the image that I produced 2001, that image is more than 20 years, images that I produced, and of the 90s, that image has matured in a way. I never thought that these images could be acquired by any museum. I never thought that these images could go as far as Brazil, for instance. All I wanted to do was to make sure that I become a responsible citizen with a tool in my hand to ensure that something is done, then for me to say or criticize other people who were doing the work. The aim was not to challenge anyone. I had to challenge the status quo. I had to make sure that I produced the document that will live on, and also to make sure that we were referenced according to how I look at life or perceived, the life as we lived. What I've learned from the people that I photograph is that people come out and they also come in, and then they also come out again. I have people that I photographed who were already part and parcel of the scene, who agreed fully and okay to be part of the images. But then at some stage in life, there was that resistance or that doubt of whether they needed to be that out, Because maybe at the beginning, you felt strongly to be out there. As the time goes on, you didn't see the need of why you would have been. And also, the coming out is a process on its own, because then you come out as a lesbian, and then later on in life you fall in love and you get married, you have children with the opposite sex. What then makes of the picture that was is what I learned, which then creates a lot of tensions between the photographer and those photographed. Because when I first photographed you, you were somebody's girlfriend. 10 years, 20 years down the line, the publication is produced. I can't undo your past. It happened. This is what I've learned. And it's a big challenge. My being in São Paulo specifically, because I can't say in Brazil, I have not been in Brazil. I've been to São Paulo, which is one of the regions in Brazil. And I would have liked to be in all the other states. I'm in São Paulo at the time of voting. And there's this unnerving experience of being in any space anyways, because what I've noticed in the world, or in between 2022, 23, 24, there's a lot of like queer and trans destitution, if I could say so. There are a lot of queer people that you see in the street of our cities, even in Cape Town, even in São Paulo, even in London, in Paris, and so on. I did not expect to see that at this time in São Paulo. Maybe I just blocked that reality from my mind, because my previous experience here was sophisticated. I lived at a hotel. I didn't have to face anything. I didn't need to go to any space where I'm told to be careful, you know. I didn't have to wake up at 2 o'clock, like at 2 a.m. and process what I've seen yesterday, you know. It's like you feel guilty for every bite that you have, you know, because then you're thinking, I'm enjoying this life now, but there are so many people like me who do not have access to basic needs. I think, it doesn't happen all the time that you get to like we go to art-related spaces, we attend functions, we go to exhibitions. Activism is never part of that blend, except that you talk about activism from where you come from. Then the immediate activism that you have to deal with, to confront, to listen to. I could say Casa Chama screwed me somehow. Of all the places, the archives I could visit at any time in any space, the archive is accessible. But it's something else to be in a city so beautiful, then as you step out of the place and reality hits home. I could say of all the spaces that I've been to, Casa Chama kept me thinking, like I don't know what to do, how to intervene, and also if I have a right to do that. There's no ways in my life that I could forget about that space. And also I felt so like sorry for Matus. Because, yeah, I've tried to create spaces also to think that I could be the savior, but I failed. So to see someone able to bring together, create jobs in that manner was kind of like humbling. A lot of young lives, you know, in that state is painful. I don't know. Yeah, I'll say of all places, Casa Chama becomes number one. And yes, there is Casa One, but Casa Chama. Because then I've never seen a lot of queer homeless people in one place where people just come just to take a bath and have coffee. Then you think to yourself, these are people who are born by men and women and who don't want to hear anything about their sexuality, about their gender. That's reality there. These are people who are supposed to be at school. Some of them maybe not even done with high school. Yeah, no, it's hard. A young person is just crying as she sings through a mic, and then get to be celebrated, has this extended family, and people are happy, and I'm thinking, I'm just producing art, and I'm living, and I'm traveling, and life seems easier. But then also it just hit on my personal corner as well, and say, all that I've learned in São Paulo is that São Paulo is about family. It's about forging that familyhood. I don't know what you call it, because I can't say sisterhood, fatherhood, brotherhood, the familyhood. Something familiar to the girls. And the noise that makes them happy, and the noise that makes them sad, and the conflict that makes them feel attended to. Because somebody said, don't do that. When you come from a space where you can't even negotiate that, don't do that. You know? Yeah, so Casa Chama affected me so much. And I just can't dare to forget about that space. I have an image of Matus, smoking outside, and I just took an image where she was looking away, and I'm like thinking, if only somebody could ask her if she's okay, because she's so deep in thought in a way. It's not even about how do I protect my space. Sometimes I ask myself, why am I doing it? I think we all long for happiness, and we don't even know how to write the word happiness. I could have maybe some resources, I could have a book published, but I'm that guy. I'm that trans man that hasn't come out. I'm that broken lesbian that has been out. I'm that gay man that never was, There is that longing for belonging to all of us, no matter how many books we could write, no matter how many essays could be written about us, no matter how much money we could have, That longing is there, and there's no art into it, and it's just hurts. Yeah. And it's like coming out all the time when one responds to an interview, because when we speak about interviews, or when we respond to interviews, it's just like pure pretense. We never respond to the true questions that are asked. Or we don't really speak about why we do what we do. I could say when I started, I didn't know where this work was going to be like. So for a person who have written or read about my work would say, oh, you're so big, but they don't know how small I am. How really, really small I am. Because it's just my personal pain that I'm documenting. Also, we make choices as human beings, some good choices, some wrong choices. We make a lot of mistakes because we're desperate. Yeah. Also, we talk about queer love, but we don't know how to love. I could say photography is what keeps me sane, really. what I know is photography. Beyond this, I don't know what else that I could do. What I ever done, that I ever completed, is photography. So I always think that any other person could become a photographer. So, because I think that it kind of like heals. We get to project what we cannot write about, what we cannot speak about, but somehow we could relate to circumstances and experiences of others. Yeah. So that's all I know. And what really makes me happy is seeing the end product of what I've captured. Yeah. Sometimes I say to people, I don't know what makes the aeroplane fly, but it does take off and land somewhere. So with photography, I don't know, this connection between the lens and the person and what's in between that makes that whole picture. So, yeah. I don't know how to take care of myself, to be honest. Because I will speak to a stranger about what? I'll be lying because I won't be telling the whole truth. You know? Yeah, but all in all, I don't think that I've achieved as much as I want to. I have tried. Is it enough? I don't think so. But I could say with all the spaces that you took us to, it really affected my way of thinking and kind of like touched corners of my heart in ways that I thought I won't go back into. Yeah. But also to say that it doesn't help to pretend. But being here, it really felt like my beginning when I started. Yeah, it has not been an easy experience to be here, to be honest. Yeah. We walked on Monday morning, on Sunday morning, just after the elections, I guess. And there was a man who was sleeping next to the cinema, covered with a banner, the 50 years banner with the heart. That was a true reflection of the society. Yeah. And it reminded me on Difficult Love of the couple that I visited under the bridge in Cape Town, in Difficult Love. So in a way it said, this is not about art anymore. This is about activism that needs intervention. Yeah. Because then if we're just doing shows, we rather do not have exhibitions. If the people who belong here cannot access the space or see themselves. That's why I was kind of like shaky with inclusion of some faces and faces. Yeah. And just to say thank you for giving this moment a chance, which is not about me. I just happen to take some photographs. Otherwise, it's not about me. I'm just doing what every other person is meant to be doing. To be responsible and to engage and to share and to bring something on the table.